Okay, good morning everyone and welcome back to our Tanya class. Today we are going to begin chapter 12. To just give a summary of where we're at, the last number of chapters, well, to go back to the beginning in chapter 1, the Alter Rebbe quoted the Talmud, who says that there are 5 types of people. There's the 2 levels within the tzaddik, the holy righteous, the 2 levels of the sinful, and the Beinoni, the ordinary, or as we would call him, the intermediary level. He's between the tzaddik, the righteous, and the sinful stands the Beinoni. In order to understand what these 5, and all of us, fit into one of these 5 categories, meaning all of us, meaning all the people, every single one of us. And in order to understand the 5 categories of people, these 5 kinds of Jewish people, he went into a whole long discussion, but the fact, he basically uncovered for us the anatomy of the human being. And he introduced us the Zoharic idea that there's 2 souls in every single one of us. A godly soul, a godly consciousness, and a human soul, a animalistic consciousness. And they're both placed in one body, meaning they each have at their disposal. Now before I go to the body, these 2 souls are made up of a whole persona, each one individually made up of 10 powers, 10 soul powers, divided into 2 sections, the 3 intellectual powers and the 7 emotional powers. In other words, what is the soul itself? Its perceptions, the way it understands and perceives things, and the way it feels. Intellect and emotions. That's what the soul is. And the same, and by the godly soul, it's a godly consciousness. He perceives only godliness to God's godly ends. His feelings are godly. He loves Hashem, fears Hashem. It's an emotionally attached to God. That's the godly soul. The human soul is the opposite. It's a consciousness within us that is very materialistic, self-centered, completely self-centered. It's into its perceptions and emotions and feelings are all geared towards self, to understand how to enhance self and to have pleasure and how to have fun and to have and self-preservation and self-enhancement. That's basically the second soul, and all its feelings and perceptions and feelings are towards those goals and ends. These 2 souls have, in addition to the 10 faculties, they also have 3 garments. 3 garments are thought, speech, and action. In other words, those perceptions and those feelings express themselves via these 3 garments. That garment of thought, the garment of speech, and the garment of action. And the godly soul has 3 such garments. What would be the garments of the godly soul? If the godly soul feels for God, what does it want to do? It wants to attach itself to God. How does the godly soul attach itself to God? By thinking godly thoughts, by speaking Torah words and davening, and doing acts of mitzvahs. Doing mitzvahs, doing godly acts, which are the 613 commandments. What are the garments of the human soul? To think about how to acquire for itself another self-centered goal or end, speak about it, and actually do it. So those are the garments of the soul. What's the difference between the garments and the soul powers itself? We described this. The soul powers are the soul itself. You can't change a perception so easily. You can't change a feeling so easily. Garments are like your clothing. You take them off, you put them on at your will. Whenever you want, you put on a blue shirt, a white shirt, a red shirt, a black shirt. You do what you want. It's up, on, off. You can do what you want with it. Same thing with the thought, speech, and action. How we feel is not something you can put on and off. If you want to change a feeling, change a perception, it takes a very, very long time and a very difficult process to change who you are, to change your character, to change how you think and how you feel. But what to think about? You make a decision. I'm going to now think about this window, or I'm going to think about God. I'm going to think about that cat. It's up to you to turn on and off. It's like a garment. You put it on and off. The same thing with speech. I could speak about God right now. I could decide to turn off that speech and put on a different, utter other words at will. That's up to you completely. And yet that can change, just like a garment. You change today into something else. 5 minutes later, you're in the mood of another garment. You put something else on. It goes on and off at your will. The same thing with the speech, thought, speech, and action. You can change in an instant what you think about. Not how you think, but what you think about. Not how you perceive, but what you can actually put your mind to right now. You understand? Just to illustrate this in a very, so that you can understand this better. Could you perceive that 2 and 2 is 5? You can't perceive such a thing. Your mind, your perception, you can't perceive such a thing. Could you think 2 and 2 is 5? Could you say 2 and 2 is 5? I just said it. But you can never understand it. That's the difference between intellect and thought. You can think what you want. You can think silly things. But you can't perceive them. You can't understand them. The intellect is the soul itself. The garments, you can do what you want. You can say things. You can say what you want. Stop saying. Change thoughts. Change words. You can do what you want. You can choose to do something kind for someone. You can choose to do something negative to someone. Or, for example, to illustrate another, if I love someone, could you decide a minute later to not love that person? No. If you have a feeling for that person, that's your character. That's who you are. What happens if you really despise someone? Could you change that and start loving him all of a sudden? No, you don't like that person. But what if I told you, say something nice to the person you despise? Could you? Sure, you can say something nice. Could you buy them a gift? You can even go and buy them a gift. Could you give them a gift? Could you smile to them? Yeah, you can do all that. Those are garments. That's the behavior. Your behaviors are not you. Sometimes your behavior does not reflect who you are.
True.
So that's garments. Alter Rebbe calls those the garments of the soul. The soul itself is how you feel and how you perceive and understand. And those are already much more attached to that's the soul itself that you can't change. You could change through tremendous work. A liberal could become a conservative can become a liberal, but it takes years of transformation. It's not how you perceive things. Could a liberal vote for a conservative? He'll go in, he'll pull the lever for a conservative. That's easy. The behavior you can change. It doesn't reflect who you are. Most of the times it does. Obviously, you're going to behave according to the way you feel and the way you think. But you could change it. You can. So those are the differences.
It could be manipulated.
Exactly. Your character can't be manipulated. That's who you are. Okay. And this is true with the godly soul and the human soul. These are two personas, two levels of consciousness within us, and that are in one body. And this is the struggle of life. So now in chapter 10 and 11, he described who the two levels of the righteous and the 2 levels of the sinful wicked. And we described that last week. What's basically the difference? What is the tzaddik? The Alter Rebbe explained that the tzaddik is someone that not only is his behavior, the garments of his soul, 100% in sync and in line with godliness, with God. Mm-hmm. He always thinks godly thoughts. He'll never think something that's ungodly. He'll never say something that's wrong or ungodly. He'll never do something that's ungodly, or at least without a godly purpose. A godly end.
Can you turn back?
And not, but 1 second. Not only that, but not only will he behave 100% godly, or with a godly end and purpose, but even his character, his soul itself, is now 100% at harmony with God. He feels for God. He doesn't perceive anything that's ungodly. His intellect and emotions, not only his behavior is 100% godly, but his character is 100% godly. In other words, he no longer has a struggle. There's no force within him that's pulling him in the direction of ungodly ends.
But he can be violent too.
A tzaddik?
Yes.
Violent?
Moses, when he saw what they were doing against God, his true love for God came out, and he was violent.
When he threw the... Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't know if you want to call that violent. Whatever, yeah, that was all godly. That was all an act of godliness.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to, when a soldier in an army or when you're self-defense, and someone comes to kill you and you kill him first, that's a godly act. It's an unfortunate situation you were put in, but to save a life, yeah, that's a godly act. There's nothing that's violent. You can call it violent if you want, but it's not the conventional meaning of violence. But it's
still godly.
It's a godly act. He's saving a life.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the soldiers that killed Osama bin Laden. That was violent. Yeah, I mean they were killing him. Yeah, it's a violent act, but it's a godly violent act. When King David went to war, it was godly. Yeah, that was a godly war that he fought.
Just
so that was not self-centered. That was God-centered.
Mm-hmm.
The tzaddik despises evil. He despises evil. He despises anything that's not godly. The sinful person, not only does he not despise evil, not only does he have an attraction to things that are self-centered and ungodly, but he actually behaves that way too. He can actually do, think, or speak things that are ungodly. His behavior is sinful. Not only his character relates to sinfulness, but actually his behavior is sinful. The Beinoni, and he divided those two into two. You know, the tzaddik has two levels and the rasha has two levels. There's the worst type of rasha is the sinful person who never even regrets. He doesn't even have any regrets when he does something wrong. The good rasha is at least someone that regrets. He allows his negative to take hold of him, but right away he regrets it. Okay, those are that. So we learned that last couple of weeks. The Beinoni is who he's going to discuss today in chapter 12. Who is this Beinoni? And we translate it as the ordinary person. What is the Beinoni? I'll say first orally outside, and then we'll learn it in the Alter Rebbe's words. The Beinoni is someone, the intermediary level. Again, the Alter Rebbe divided us. The human being, he says, there's two parts of the human being. There's the actual soul itself, his character, and then there's the behavior of the soul, the thought, speech, and the action, those garments, he called it the garments. He says the Beinoni is the ordinary person. What makes him ordinary? He has temptations like all of us. He has cravings. His soul, his character has not been transformed to being godly 100% at all. There's a dichotomy in his life. His godly soul is pulling him towards godliness. His animal soul and what we call the human animal soul pulls him towards God, towards selfish ends. And every day is a struggle for him. Do I behave godly or do I behave animalistic? And he has that struggle. There's no, his character is not refined. There's not being transformed like the tzaddik. In that sense, he's like the rasha. The Beinoni shares certain characteristics of the sinful person and certain characteristics of the tzaddik. What are they? When it comes to his inner character, his inner soul, he's like the sinful person. He has cravings, temptations for selfish things. He has a tremendous dichotomy and schism within him. But he's like the tzaddik in his thought, speech, and action. He'll never actually sin. He'll never actually allow those cravings to take hold of his body and actually get him to act upon them. That he'll never let. So in his behavior he's like the tzaddik, in his character he's like the sinful person. You see, the tzaddik not only behaves like a tzaddik, but he actually feels and perceives like a tzaddik. Anything that's ungodly to him is abhorrent. He doesn't wake up in the morning, should I go to daven or shouldn't I go to daven? He doesn't have those struggles. The thought of not going to daven is abhorrent to him. He doesn't understand how anyone can think like that. He has transformed his inner character. He only wants one thing, godly things. He's destroyed the evil element within his soul. He's gotten rid of it. He transformed it. The Beni has not. The Rasha, on the other hand, not only has he not gotten rid of that faulty character, but he allows it even to take hold of his actions. You understand? He sins once in a while, or more than once in a while, depending on on how much of a Rasha he is. The Beni is a person that he struggles, he has those cravings, but he never gives in to them. He never allows it to take hold of his thought, speech, or action. His behavior is like the tzaddik, his inner character, his soul is like the soul, like the sinful person. That's what characterizes the Beni. Now I want you to, first we understand this. So here we have a person that every day by him is a struggle between good and evil, between godly and selfishness. Yet he has the power to always overcome the struggle. How does he do this? Think about that for a minute. It's one thing you're outside, you don't struggle anymore. See, that's a given.
It's your nature.
But imagine, no, it wasn't his nature. He had to overcome it. He had to transform it. It was hard work. But once he becomes a tzaddik, he no longer struggles. There's no struggle between good and evil. The evil he's gotten rid of the evil. But imagine a Beni. Just think about yourself for a minute. You know what it means to have the struggles. We're dichotomized. You know what dichotomized means? We're split personalities. We want godliness 1 minute, and a minute later we want this. You know, we struggle between two personalities within us, the godly and the animalistic soul. Those are two things tugging at us. Could you imagine you have those cravings, you never give in. How do you have the power to always overcome this?
How?
It's a monumental thing. How does a person never, not just he overcomes it today, but today, tomorrow, the next day, never gives in to his cravings, never gives in to his temptations of his animalistic self, and they're very powerful. They're very strong. They drive him crazy every day. Never gives in. What's the secret to this?
Prayer.
Could you all relate to that? Could you all relate to this type of person?
No.
You can relate to them on certain times that you'll overcome a temptation, but to say I'll overcome a temptation every single time for 20, 30 years, for 50 years, whatever it is that God grants us. And I want you to understand what it means. It doesn't mean that he's overcoming pure evil deeds. He won't steal, he won't cheat. We're not talking about that. Not only that. It goes to the point where even should I spend this time on godly, even leisurely things? Do I watch television or I sit and learn?
Simple as that.
And he says, no, I'd like to maybe watch a good, entertaining show, but what does God want me to do right now? He probably wants me to learn. No, I'm going to learn. And 20 minutes later, he doesn't want me to stop learning. Continue. And it's the whole point. It's not only learning. The Beni doesn't learn all day. Don't get me wrong. He's a person that lives a normal life. What do I mean a normal life? He works. He sleeps. He engages in his family. He's married, and he's a normal human being in that sense. He's not learning, or he's not a hermit. But he's always never self-centered. There's never a self-centered craving that he allows to get the better part of him. Anything he does is with a godly end. That takes unbelievable discipline. How does he accomplish this? How does he have the power to overcome that incredible struggle? And I knew some people that were like this. They're not very many, obviously. So the Rebbe is going to tell us here in the beginning of this chapter 12, to the Beinoni, davening, that time of his davening is crucial, key. It's the highlight of his day. It's the davening moment, the time that he spends in davening that is crucial for him to capture those, to utilize the davening experience. Davening means prayer, which during davening he's in a different world. And not only is he in a different world during davening, but the davening, that hour, 2, 3, whatever time he spends davening every day, gives him the ability to even overcome the struggle in the other 20 hours that he's not davening. Davening for the Beini is the most important thing. That's the highlight of his day. Without davening, he would never be a Beini. If the davening of his experience during prayer is not at the level where it has to be, you cannot be a Beini. You'll never have the power to overcome. Davening is crucial to him.
Okay.
What happens during davening?
He's connected.
Davening is a time, and the Beini doesn't daven in a half hour. He spends a lot of time davening. His davening could take hours, every day, by the way, sometimes. Doesn't have to, but his davening is a whole different experience. And during davening, what is the essence of davening, prayer? What is the experience of prayer? What is it supposed to be? I'm not asking what it is in actuality by most people. They daven by rote, many people. They rattle it off and they say the words and they're rolling on the tefillin, and 15 minutes later they're rolling it off and they're off to work. That's not the ultimate experience of davening. That's better than nothing, obviously, but that's not what davening is. What is davening? What's the purpose of davening? Why did God tell us to pray every day? Davening is a time with the Beinoni, with a human being, the Jew, develops a relationship with God. Davening is the pivotal hour of the day, the 2 hours, whatever it is that he's at. And he's totally involved in the davening 100%. He's contemplating the greatness of God during davening, which is really the subject matter. When you read the pages of davening, it talks about how great God is and how connected to us he is and how much he loves. All the different aspects of the greatness of God. That's where he meditates very strongly.
That 3 times a day?
Mainly in the morning davening. Mainly the morning davening.
Why is the morning more important?
Because you'll see soon. We'll explain it soon. Because the morning is a much longer davening, and that's the beginning of the day. So that sets the tone for the day. So that's where he's fully engaged. He's fully engaged in the 2 other times he davens also, but it's a much quicker experience. It's not such a lengthy. You go into my house, I have on the walls pictures, paintings, Hasidic art. Many of them, not many, but some of them, you know what they depict? The Hasidic prayer, the Beinoni's prayer. You could see on the wall, it's a Shabbos, especially during Shabbos they daven. They daven all day on Shabbos. A Beinoni davens 6-7 hours on Shabbos. His Shachris can last 6-7 hours. It's a daily, that's what he does all day. So you look in the picture, the painter depicts this very, very beautifully. He has a shul, the clock shows 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you have a chassid sitting on his bench under his talis, snapping his finger to a nice song, that melody that's carrying him away into the atmosphere, to the experience of davening. Another chassid with his head to the wall, also in a trance. Another chassid is sitting and meditating. Another chassid is putting his talus over his shoulder. He didn't even put his talus on yet at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Because he prepared for davening for 4 or 5 hours. That's the Beinoni. This davening is the ultimate experience for the Beinoni. Now, some Beinonis do it once a week at that level. But a true Beinoni probably has to daven every day. What happens during davening? If you look in the Siddur, there's a mitzvah every morning to say the Shema, right? There's a mitzvah to say the Shema every morning. What is the mitzvah? What does Shema talk about? The oneness of Hashem. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is the Lord is one. Then it says you should love thy God, your Lord, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Right? Mm-hmm. There's a mitzvah, we do many mitzvahs during the day or during the year. There's a mitzvah to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, right? Do you make a blessing before you blow the shofar? Every mitzvah has a blessing beforehand, right?
It has a meaning too.
Baruch atah, you make a blessing before you put on film. Baruch atah, before you light Shabbos candles. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, lishmoa kol shofar, al nitilat lulav, lahaniach tefillin, ladlik ner shel Shabbat. Every mitzvah has the bless. You bless God before you do the mitzvah. Comes to the Shema, there's no blessing beforehand. There's no mitzvah. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likro et Shema. It's a mitzvah in the Torah like every other mitzvah. Why don't we make a blessing? You ever thought about that? Did you ever think of why not? Why don't we make a mitzvah? Huh?
There's a section called blessings before the Shema.
Yeah.
So you are making blessings, a bunch of them actually.
But yeah, you're right. The blessing before the Shema is the blessing. Those blessings you make before this, you say about 4 or 5 pages
right.
Before the Shema, that's considered the blessing before the Shema.
Right.
But why don't we make the traditional blessing like we make before every other
Sure,
mitzvah? Why not?
Right.
Because what is Shema trying to accomplish? For you to love Hashem. Right? That's what Shema is about, to love Hashem. In order to be a Beinoni, you must love Hashem. You cannot be a Beinoni without real love to Hashem. Right? This is basically, we understand that. You can't be dedicated to a person 100% if you don't really love that person deeply, very profoundly. The same thing was with God. If you love your spouse, you want to be totally dedicated to this person. Marry them, live with them, and be totally dedicated and fixed on that person. Where you never do anything that's not for that person. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. Could you do that by having some, secondary love for that person? No. You have to. If you want to be totally devoted to another human being, you must love that person profoundly. That's a human being. Imagine God, which you don't see. To be totally dedicated to God all the time, and that's the Beinoni's experience. His thought, speech, and action, his behavior is dedicated to God, towards godly purposes and godly ends 100% of the time. And that he's like the tzaddik. For that he must have a profound love for Hashem, a burning love in his heart for Hashem. Where does he develop that love? How does he develop that love? During davening. So the blessings that you say before the Shema, which talks about God creating all the worlds and the angels and how they're one with Hashem and how they sanctify Hashem. And this whole thing, you look in the Siddur, I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you. That's the blessing before the Shema, because that is what brings you into the atmosphere of being able to develop a real profound love for Hashem. For the Beinoni, that's an absolute must. And the Beinoni, not only, so when he's davening, we're told, Alter Rebbe explains that when a Beinoni davens and he has that tremendous love during davening, that's his, then he doesn't feel any struggle. Then he puts to sleep his animalistic side. When he's davening, the animalistic side is not bothering him.
So it's suppressed.
Suppressed for that then. But the minute davening is over, 15 minutes later, the animal soul woke up. It's like that little child, right? When he's sleeping, it's peace and quiet. He wakes up, he's all over the place, right? He's running around, throwing things around, opening shelves, emptying them out, right? Taking your books off the shelf and putting them on the floor. It's a mess. It's a total, it's chaos. The animal soul, when the Beinoni is sleeping, when the Beinoni is davening, the animal soul is put to sleep. He's shut down. The love of the godly soul of the Beinoni during davening is so powerful that the animal soul loses its power to even voice an opinion. It's shut down. But then it wakes up. It's asleep, so to say. But then, after davening, it wakes up. And what happens when it wakes up? It's trouble again. The temptations and the struggles, and it's all back to full force. But the Beinoni does something during davening that gives him the power that at least during the day when the animal soul is back in its full force, it doesn't ever, he has enough strength to allow him to say no to the animal soul every single time it voices his opinion. And we'll learn it in his words. We'll talk about that. But that's the Beinoni. And I've already told you many times that if you're not going to be a Beinoni 100% of the time, we definitely could be a Beinoni certain times of our life. But for you to understand that, let me say one other point about the Beinoni. Let's try to describe this Beinoni for a minute. Okay, so you have the Beinoni, he's sitting home, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or he's out in the street, and it's a busy world out there with all the, it's just a regular, he sees what you see, he hears what you hear, it's just the world out there. It's not a godly place at all. And the temptations and all this, it's in full force. The Beinoni feels it. So the animalistic soul feels tremendous temptations and cravings for sinful activity, for self-centered activity. Right? So what happens in the Beinoni psyche at that time? It sends up a message to his brain. Go do this. This is good. This is pleasure. Go. Have fun. What does the Beinoni do? The Beinoni has a debate with the animal soul, you think?
No.
Should I go still right now? Or should I go give in to this craving?
Mm-mm.
It never occurs to the Beinoni to do something wrong. It's not a... When I say that the animalistic side of the Beinoni is in full force, it's only in full force in the sense that it pushes cravings. But in the conscious mind of the Beinoni, he's never contemplating, maybe I should go do that right now. He never has that thought.
It's alive. The thought
It's
is
just,
alive.
he has the craving, but he's never contemplating, entertaining the thought, maybe I should go do that right now. Maybe I should go eat something that's not kosher, even though it smells really delicious. The Beinoni never thinks like that. It never occurs to him, maybe I'll go do this. The difference between the Beinoni and the Tzaddik is that the Tzaddik, when he sees and smells a food that's not godly, he throws up. He has a negative reaction. It's disgusting to him. The Beinoni doesn't throw up. He likes it. He can smell it as good. But will he consider ever going to eat that? To go actually sin? Of course not. It never occurs to him to go sin. But he has a desire for it. He has the desire for it. And that, by the way, is part of the frustration of the Beinoni. It drives him crazy, this. As the Alter Rebbe is going to address this frustration in chapter 27, 28, 29. It's frustrating for the Beinoni. He loves Hashem. He really has a love for Hashem. And yet, he's so out of line with godliness. What Hashem finds disgusting, he finds delicious. Do you imagine you're married to your spouse, and you want to become one with your spouse, think the same way, feel, you really want to morph into one, right? Imagine 20 years after your marriage, whatever she loves, you hate, and whatever you love, she hates. What kind of relationship is that? Isn't that wouldn't that be a frustrating relationship?
Struggling.
It's a frustrating relationship, no?
Normal.
It's not called normal, right? The Beinoni is deeply frustrated by this. I'm serving God for 20, 30 good years. I love Him. Yet what He hates, I love. What He finds abhorrent, pork, or any temptation, I find delicious. I'll never do it. It never occurs to Him to actually act on it. But He still, in His inner character, He finds it exciting. What kind of... Am I real? Who am I? He's frustrated by this.
So he has the potential, you say?
He what?
He has the potential still in him.
To sin. Sure, he has. He has cravings. They're alive as well as they were 20 years
That's
ago.
what he's fighting.
That's a struggle, but it's worse than the struggle. He's frustrated by something else. Why do I still love everything that God hates? I have not made one bit of progress in my life. Could you imagine in your relationship with your spouse? You have not made one bit of progress. What she finds abhorrent, you find delicious. What kind of relationship is this? Or what he finds abhorrent, you find delicious. It's something's wrong. For the Baini, this is deeply frustrating. You understand where I'm going? You understand what the problem is? The Baini finds it deeply frustrating. He wants a real relationship with God. He wants to begin to think and feel for God and feel like God. He wants to be in line with Hashem. And he's not. And he never gets there. Every morning is a new struggle. He still wants ugly, selfish things. He'll never entertain doing it. But he does want it. Oh, so now let's go to us. When I say that you could be a Beinoni in certain things, what's the definition of a Beinoni? A Beinoni is someone that not only he behaves properly, but he doesn't. He wants to. He has cravings for unholy things, but he'll never entertain the thought of doing it. Doesn't even. It's out of the question. It's out of the question. For most of us, it's not out of the question. Sometimes we even do something that's wrong. So our struggles are real struggles. Should I do it or should I not? Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. The Baini doesn't have a struggle. Should I go eat something that's not kosher? Should I not daven today? No such thing by him. But he struggles in the sense that there is a reality within him that pulls him in the other direction, that wants to pull him somewhere else. Let's talk about us now. When I say you could be a Baini with certain things, let's take, for example, do you always light Shabbos candles? Every Friday. Proper time? Okay. Let's talk to those that do that. Have you always done that? Since you never missed a Friday? Not bad. That's pretty good. Okay. Let's say, okay, so you never missed a Friday. Very good. Could you relate to, if someone came to you and told you, what time is Lichtbenchen, what time is candle lighting this Friday? 7:30, let's say. Someone came and told you, at 7:30, about 7 o'clock, there's an unbelievable show in downtown Fort Lauderdale. That's really exciting. It's a violinist, Pavarotti, who knows? Something really outstanding, which you like, which you enjoy. And they know you enjoy it because you're into that stuff. And they say, come with us Friday night, I got you tickets, you're going to love it. Could you relate to going there? You can relate to it. You can see the pleasure of going to that. It would never enter your mind to do it. You see, that's the tzaddik, he hears Friday night a concert, he has a negative reaction. This is disgusting to him. It's so ungodly, it makes him nauseous. The thought makes him sick. The Baini, the thought doesn't make him sick at all. He enjoys a concert. He understands the pleasure of a concert. It doesn't give him a negative reaction at all. But he'll never consider doing it. So he may feel a struggle in the sense he feels there's something pulling him there. He'll never entertain going. But he relates to the pleasure of it. Well, let me give you another example. You fast on Tisha B'Av. Who fasts here on Tisha B'Av? Okay. You always fasted on Tisha B'Av? Okay, but you started. At some point you adapted to the idea of fasting on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the day that the temple was destroyed. Let's talk about the tzaddik. He fasts on Tisha B'Av, right? Is it hard to fast on Tisha B'Av? You're hungry. At some point during the day you start getting hungry. It's 24 hours, you didn't eat, you're starting to get hungry. Imagine someone comes to you and says, right now, the mother cooked a meal, it's delicious. The chef, she brought in a chef, like there's no tomorrow, the best chef in South Florida. And kosher mahadrin, it's pure kosher food. And it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you are hungry. Will the thought of eating make you sick? No, not at all. And it's actually tempting. It would be actually very tempting to you. It would be very tempting to you. Would you consider eating? Would it be like should I go eat now? Should I really? That's not happening in your psyche. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe you're not a Baini with regard to fasting on Tisha B'Av. But I would say someone that's fasting on Tisha B'Av for the last 10, 20 years is not going to entertain the thought of going to eat, because that's what it is. That's what fasting on Tisha B'Av is. You have the temptation, but you don't do it anyway. But the temptation is there. By the tzaddik, he doesn't have a temptation to eat on Tisha B'Av. The thought of eating on Tisha B'Av makes him sick. Makes him sick. He has a negative reaction. The Baini does not make him sick. On the contrary, he feels the temptation for food. He feels the temptation for food. On Tisha B'Av. He'll walk through a restaurant that's cooking good food, it'll smell good to him. And he'll have a temptation for it. Would he consider, oh, maybe I should go in? No, of course not. He'll never think such a thing. The Baini is like that with every single sin, with every single act. The full Bainini. We could develop that attitude towards certain mitzvahs. You wake up in the morning. You have to put on tefillin. You put on tefillin every day. Could you relate to the people that don't put on tefillin, that they like to sleep in a little more and not go daven? Sure, I can relate to it. I understand the pleasure of sleeping. Would I ever entertain not davening in the morning? It wouldn't. I never entertained such a thought. Could I relate to not davening? Can I see the temptation? Of course I can see the temptation. In fact, not only I can relate to it, I have that temptation. When I wake up in the morning, I'd love to turn up, roll over to the other side and sleep for another hour and miss davening today. Would I ever consider it? Of course not. The temptation is there, but not as a real consideration. That's with certain things. Not always, not everything. I certainly give in to my evil inclination often, too often. I could learn more and I don't. I'm on my phone. That's not good. The Baini would never do that. The Baini would never waste time. If he can do something constructive and godly, he'll never waste time on stupid, on silly things, playing a game or whatever. He'll never do that. Does he have the temptation for entertainment? Of course he has the temptation. But it never entertains giving in. But the struggle is there. The struggle is there. The temptation is there. How does he overcome 100% of the time? Alter Rebbe is going to say it's like that. It's because of his davening. And then later on, even when davening is over and his animal soul woke up with a vengeance, Alter Rebbe introduces in chapter 12 a very important rule in life. Me'ach shalit al halev. The mind controls the heart. Where is your godly soul? In your mind. In chapter 9 he already told us the godly soul is in your brain. That's the seat of the godly soul. Where's the seat of the animal soul, of the human soul? In your heart. The mind is controlled by nature. The nature of the human, the way God created us is that if there's a fight between your mind and your heart, and they're both engaged in the battle, the mind will always win. And by the Beinoni, the mind is fully engaged. By me and you, by all of us, the mind gives in. It doesn't engage in a battle. The heart overpowers. Why? Because the mind is not engaging in the battle. It's not going full force, as we'll discuss as we learn it in Alter Rebbe's words. By the Beinoni, the mind is very, very alive. And when his mind is alive, because of his davening experience, the godliness is in his mind, the consciousness of the godly soul is there fully, and and by nature it overpowers the heart. The hard part is for your mind to engage in the battle. Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. So you're walking in the street. Let's take a simple, all of us, that we can all relate to. We're walking in the street. Or we're sitting at home. And we have a craving for something. That's not so godly. There's no godly purpose. It's more self-centered. It's a self-centered craving. Okay? You can relate to that, right? We all have those. So now you start asking yourself, should I do it? So there's two voices in you. If the godly soul tells you you're wasting your time on such silliness, God would not want that. That's not a godly thing to do. You should spend time doing something constructive. Call a friend, help out, learn a little, read something godly. Whatever, do something meaningful, purposeful. Don't just waste your time on silly things, on entertainment that serves no godly purpose. Your heart tells you, which is your human soul, it's good. I really want that. It's a good temptation. It's really a good entertaining movie, let's say. Your godly soul says, which isn't the brain, says, not a good idea. Who wins? Who wins? Well, we know the reality that oftentimes our heart wins. Right? We know that to be the fact, that our heart wins. Every time you do something that's ungodly, it means your heart won. Your animal soul won over the temptation, won over the idealistic godly soul. Why did that happen? Why did the godly soul win? If the mind is more stronger than the heart by nature, why is the mind, which is the seat of the godly soul, not winning every time? The Alter Rebbe says that the meyach, that the brain is strong as shalit alalev, has control over, that controls the heart. Why is it not winning? Why does the heart win? You understand my question?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Lack of preparation.
Lack of?
Preparation. You didn't prepare yourself right. You didn't daven enough. You didn't.
It could be. You're probably right to a certain extent. But I'm asking
Distance,
that moment. But I'm talking about that moment. You had two voices. According to you had the voice of the brain and the voice of the heart. And according to the Alter Rebbe, the voice of the brain is by nature like a lion is stronger than a cat, than a gazelle. Is a lion stronger than a gazelle? By nature, that's the way God created. A lion is much stronger. There's going to be a fight between a lion and a gazelle. The lion will always win, no question about it. But when you see the gazelle winning, you say, wait a minute, how did that happen? How does a gazelle win a lion? The Alter Rebbe is saying your brain is stronger than your heart. How does your heart win the brain, which is stronger? How does that happen?
Lack of wisdom.
It is an insufficiency of love for God. What happens is your brain has failed in some degree to use its powers to instill with you sufficient love for God to cause this animalistic thought to be disgusting to you.
I'll say it a little different. Let's go back to the gazelle and the lion. When will the lion always win the gazelle? If they're both engaged in the fight.
Right.
If the lion gives it a good shot. What happens if the lion is lazy that day? He's not putting up a fight. He's not putting up a fight. If the lion's not going to put up a fight, the gazelle may get him.
Or maybe if he's not too hungry.
Whatever, he's not putting up a fight. When your brain loses, it's because your brain didn't put up a fight. He didn't engage in the battle. He gave up. He didn't put up a fight. What does it mean for the brain to put up a fight? So let's go through this a second. You're sitting at home. Let's talk about a temptation. You have a temptation you feel is getting the better side of you. Your heart wants it. You really want it. You know, and we know what it means when the heart really wants something. You know, it's on fire. It's very hard to overcome it, right? So what did the brain have to do? The brain knows that it's not good for you to do this. This is not healthy. It's not a good thing. It's not godly. It's not good for your soul. It's not good for your future. It's not good. What does the brain have to do to engage in the battle, to get in the ring, to get into the ring? There's a boxing match going on, right? If you're not going to get into the ring, of course the one that's in the ring is going to win. How do you get into the ring? The mind has to tell the heart, wait a minute, calm down a second, let's think this over. Let's think this over. Let's take 10 minutes and think this over. Calm down. The mind has to really get involved in the discussion, meaning in this inner struggle, and really want to win this. What happens often in our struggles, the heart is on fire and the mind is not on fire. The mind is not engaging for real. So of course the heart's going to win those times. When is me'ach? When is the brain stronger than the heart? When it's fighting the heart. We don't fight enough. That's the problem. Our mind knows at some level that it's wrong, but the heart shuts it down. Shuts down the mind's thought process. It makes, the heart is noisy. The heart is, fire. It wants it very much right now. He can't wait 10 minutes. The mind tells the heart, let's wait 24 hours. Let's wait an hour. Let's think this over. When that happens, when the mind starts thinking it over for an hour, you'll win. You'll win. At that point, you'll probably win. If you engage in the battle. The Alter Rebbe says the Beinoni has enough power in the mind because of his davening to engage in the battle, and then he'll always win. And he always wins. It's easier said than done. Very much easier said than done, because we know the reality of life. We allowed our hearts to win a lot of times. It's because our mind's not really engaged in the fight. The mind is lazy to fight. It knows that it's wrong. Take a drug addict, a kid that wants to do something wrong, wants to skip school, wants to go out with his friends and just party. He knows that it's not good. The next morning he's going to be tired in school and he has finals. Don't be stupid. Go home and go sleep and study for the test. No, but someone invited him to a bar and he's having a good time. He wants to go. Struggle. He has a temptation. His mind tells him go to sleep, go study. The heart tells him go to the bar. Why does the kid go to the bar? He doesn't know that it's a stupid thing to go to the bar. He knows it's stupid. He knows what the mind knows. But the mind is whispering to him. It's not really engaged. It's in the back of he's not really engaged in the battle. The heart is taking over and not even letting the mind get into the boxing ring. But if the mind got into the boxing ring, he would win. He has to win. That's its nature. A lion that fights a gazelle, the lion wins. No question about it. The mind is a lion, the heart is a gazelle. By nature. The reason the gazelle is winning is there because the mind is put to sleep. The lion is not fighting. Think about it. The last struggle you had. What really happened in your inner psyche? That's what happens. That's what happens. The heart shuts down the mind. If the mind doesn't let himself be shut down and says to the heart, "Hey, wait a minute. Let's go through this a minute. Let's spell this out. What am I going to gain if I go to the bar?" And you put it out, and you have a half-hour conversation with your heart. Your mind is winning. Your mind will win. Now, it could be he'll win now, and 10 minutes later he'll be back at it. It's a constant struggle, and that's what makes this so hard. But it gets easier. You understand? It's obviously you make some progress. You make. We can learn. You want to start the chapter, or it's already 20 after 10. But let's go a few minutes at least. Yeah. Chapter 12 on page 47. The intermediate man, the Beinoni, is he in whom evil never attains enough power to capture the small city. Remember in chapter 9 he described the body as the small city, and there are two kings trying to conquer the city. The two souls, right? They're trying to conquer the city. So he says the intermediary man, the Beinoni, is he in whom evil never attains enough power to capture the small city. The thought, speech, and action. That it never has the power to do. So as to clothe itself in the body and make it sin. It doesn't have the power. The evil within him never overpowers the good. That is to say, the three garments of the animal soul, namely thought, speech, and act, originating in the unholy side, the klipa, the ungodly ends, the ungodly pursuits, do not prevail within him over the divine soul, to the extent of clothing themselves in the body in the brain, in the mouth, and in the other 248 parts, which are the action, thereby causing them to sin and defiling them, God forbid. You follow? Only the three garments of the divine soul, they alone, are implemented in the body. Every thought and every utterance and every deed is an expression of the godly soul by the Beinoni. They never express the desires and temptations of the animal soul. The animal soul's evil does not have enough power to actually get the three garments to express them. Only the godly soul's three garments are manifest in the body. Again, only the three garments of the divine soul, they alone are implemented in the body, being the thought, speech, and act engaged in the 613 commandments of the Torah. He has never committed, listen to these words, he has never committed, nor ever will commit, any transgression. These are powerful words. Imagine the Alter Rebbe saying over there. The Beinoni never sinned. Now, I want to clarify that. That doesn't mean that if you ever sin once, you can never be a Beinoni again. That's not what the Alter Rebbe means over there. Because then that excludes, or anyone that ever sinned can never be a Beinoni. That's ridiculous. The Beinoni is going to say in chapter 14, the Midas Kol Adam, that's what every person can attain. So even if you sin, you do tshuva and you become a Beinoni. You repent, you can go on to become a Beinoni. What he means over here is in this present state, as a Beinoni, he can't see himself ever sinning. That means once he becomes a Beinoni, sin is out of the question for him. That's what he means over here. He never sinned and never will sin means as a Beinoni. In the present reality of being a Beinoni, he's reached a point where sin is out of the question for him. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have the temptation for sin, but actual sin is out of the question. He has never committed nor ever will commit any transgression, neither can the name wicked be applied to him even temporarily, even for a moment throughout his life. He can't see such a thing. It never can happen. Having become the Beinoni, in other words. Doesn't mean if you sinned when you were 20 years old, you can't ever become a Beinoni again. But once you're a Beinoni, in the present state of the Beinoni, sin is out of the question. Just like for you, I said before, not lighting Shabbos candles is out of the question. Unless some crazy circumstance happens where you're stuck, you're on a plane, you don't have candles. I'm not talking about that. If it's your choice, there's no possibility for such a thing. It's not possible for most people around this table not to fast on Yom Kippur. You can't even imagine such a thing. It's not possible. It's not possible. Why? You don't like food on Yom Kippur all of a sudden? No, I like food on Yom Kippur. But it's never coming into my mouth. That's not an option. It's not even you don't even entertain the concept, entertain it as a real thought. You have temptation for food, yeah, but it's not a temptation to the point where you're thinking, maybe I should go eat breakfast today, or lunch, or a snack. That never happened. That's not possible. So that's your Beinoni with regard to fasting on Yom Kippur. The Beinoni is a Beinoni with everything. Imagine. But the Beinoni has full control over his actions, his speech, his words, and his thoughts. But the character of the Beinoni, the 10 faculties of the soul, he has not mastered. He still perceives things that are not godly. Still temptation. He still tempts for things that are ungodly.
When you say he has mastery over his thought, not exactly, because he does think about.
Very good question. Very good question. That's a very good question. You're asking the thoughts that enter our mind all the time.
Can't help it.
You can't help it. So we addressed this last week already, if you remember, or 2 weeks
The
ago.
white bird that flies around your head.
I don't remember that.
Martin Luther in the 15th century said he can't help a white bird from flying around his head, but he can stop it from building a nest in his hair.
Exactly. The Beinoni has negative thoughts coming into his conscious mind. Because when the heart wants something, it sends a message to the brain. But what the Beinoni does, he has a door at his brain, and he doesn't let it in. In other words, it goes in, it comes up to his mind, he has a negative thought, but he shuts it right out. He doesn't let it nest in his brain, exactly. He doesn't let it sit there. He removes it from his mind immediately. He can have temptations for things. And where do you feel the temptation? We say the heart, but where are you conscious of this temptation? In the brain. That's where everything is in the brain. He's conscious of the temptation in the brain, but he shuts it right out. A negative thought he gets rid of right away. It goes there, but he sends it right out. Kicks it out. Pushes it right out. So the Baini is not in control of what enters his mind. He's in control of what stays there. There's a big distinction. So the Baini will have things going into his mind, but he'll never have them stay there. He shuts them right out. How do you shut out a thought? You start thinking about something else. You start right away thinking about something else, right? That's what happens. And by the way, in the Chassid's life, the Tanya Jew's life, we call them the Tanya Jew. Someone that tries to introduce the Tanya's way. This is going to be a very serious part of his experience. Thoughts will come in, you push them right out, because otherwise you're giving in. You allow a negative thought to linger in your mind, then you're thinking not good things. Thinking is different than what enters your mind. What enters your mind is beyond your control. You don't have control over that. Like I said, the Beinoni does not have control over his character. Meaning the 10th faculty, the soul itself, is not in line with God. He'll have negative temptations, and those temptations will send messages up to the brain all the time, and that's where the struggle is happening. The struggle is happening in the brain. Why do you want to go eat something? Because your brain just told you this is good food. The brain is going to tell you that 100 times a day about different things. But you're going to have to right away say no and get it out. The Alter Rebbe said in chapter 11 that the Beinoni, that the Rasha, the sinful person, allows carnal thoughts to linger in his mind. He gave an example of carnal thoughts. Zivug zacharun keva. He gave that as an example. The Beinoni will never. It'll go there. It'll send up a message like that. He may have this second, it may go up there into his mind, but it'll shut that right out. And the same thing with thoughts about anything. And any negative thought. A hateful thought towards someone else. Shut it out. So that's the Beinoni. He can't control what goes into his mind. He can control what stays there. That he has full control. Because that's a garment. You can decide to think about something else right now. That he has power. So I think that answers your question, right? Yeah. We'll stop here and we'll continue next week.